Hello, everybody. I'm Peter the Booklover, and this is Book Talk. This is where I talk about the books that I recently read. And in this episode 12, we're going to talk about the Diary of Anne Frank. Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. I'm Peter the Booklover. I like to read books and I like to talk about books and collect books. So I make videos where I talk about the books that I read and the books that I collect. And I got a really interesting book that I'm going to talk about here. I also talk about movies, and I'm going to have to talk about a movie at the same time because there's a great movie that goes along with this book. And also there's a lot of adaptations of this story, and I look forward to watching more of this because this is a fantastic story. But before I get into the book, I'm going to talk about the audience, and I want to thank the audience for being here. You're really great for being here. I always want to thank the audience for being here because you are really make it worth my time. So thank you so much for coming by. Okay, so the thing about this is that this is a book that I read. I read the book, this book right here. And I also watched the movie after reading the book. And the thing about it is, after reading the book, watching the movie was definitely a fantastic experience. They really go together. So before I get into the book, I'm going to cover this movie. The movie is The Diary of Anne Frank, and it came out in 1959, and it was directed by George Stevens. Now, George Stevens actually directed the movie Giant, and he also directed the movie Shane, which are both great movies. I really love both of those movies. Okay, and let me give you the cast of this movie. Now, Anne Frank is played by Millie Perkins. Now, she has done a lot of other movies, but nothing that I'm familiar with. Otto Frank is played by Joseph Schildkraut. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Schildkraut, maybe. And he has no other movies that I'm really familiar with. Edith Frank is played by Gusty Huber, and she has no other movies that I'm familiar with. And then we got Margaret Frank, the daughter. She is played by Diane Baker, and this woman was in Silence of the Lambs as the governor of the daughter that was captured by Buffalo Bill. Great performance in that movie, and she did a great performance in this movie. Hans Van Damme is played by Lou Jacobi. Now, Lou Jacobi has been in a lot of movies and TV shows, and this person is very familiar to me, but I can't place where I'm really familiar with this person. But I've definitely seen this person before. I just can't place him. Maybe in the Dick Van Dyke Show, I'm not really sure. But Hans Van Damme was played by Lou Jacobi. Then we got Petronella Van Damme. She's played by Shelley Winters. Now, she's been in a lot of movies. She was in The Poseidon Adventure. She was in Night of the Hunter. She was also in a movie that I've seen as a child, Pete's Dragon. I remember really enjoying that as a kid, and then I watched it as an adult, and I really didn't think much of it. She's also in Red River, which is a fantastic John Wayne movie. Then we have Peter Van Damme, played by Richard Braemar, and I'm not familiar with any of his movies as well. Then we got Albert Drussel, played by Ed Wynn. Now, he was in Mary Poppins, and he was the voice of the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. I do not remember him in Mary Poppins, but I really definitely love Alice in Wonderland. That is a great movie. Now, to mention this movie, to give my opinion of this movie, is that this movie was very, very good. Very intense. Had some very intense moments in it, and I highly recommend it. It's a 3-hour movie, but it's an engrossing 3 hours. And you really get to see the way they were terrified when they'd heard people and how they had to be quiet when people came by. And really, after reading the book and then watching the movie pretty much hit home, you know. And I actually think the movie is a little bit better than the book, but the book is fantastic. Now, let me get into the book. Now, The Diary of Anne Frank, I believe it came out in 1947. And the first thing I want to say is that Anne Frank was very articulate. The reason why you'll like this book is because she was very articulate, and if things wouldn't have happened to her, she probably would live to be a fantastic author because she had great writing skills. And one thing I'm gonna do about in this talking about this book, I'm gonna kind of spoil this book, but one of my flows with this book is that they should have put the afterwards in the beginning of the book. So I think it would have made the book a lot better because the fact of the matter is, I think it's important that you should know that this young girl does not live. She does not live past 1945. Okay. The diary starts out where she gets it on her 13th birthday. It's a birthday gift, and she really enjoys it, and she starts writing into it. And she addresses the diary as Kitty, and she's very happy to get this diary. And that was June 14th, 1942. Now, July 9th, 1942 is when she goes into hiding with her family at 263 Pensengracht, an office building. It's front of it is like there's a business operating at the same time, and they're in the back of this building. And watching the movie actually really explains it a little bit better that there's, they couldn't talk between 8 and 5 o'clock when people were working. So they kind of explain it in the book, but not as clearly as you see it in the movie. Okay, and then they're in hiding, and then November 17th, 1942, they receive a new person, Albert Dussel, and learn how badly things are for the Jewish people. And they're really, the scene in the movie is pretty great on how they really start learning how bad things are on the outside. Then November 28th, 1942, they have to cut back on the electricity and live in darkness because of the rations are really short. And then September 8th, they find out that Italy surrenders. They capitulate. And then March 3rd, 1944, Anne starts falling in love with Peter. Now, before this period, she's saying that she's not falling in love with Peter, but around March 3rd, 1944 is when she really starts to show that she has feelings for Peter. Then on March 29th, 1944, Anne wonders what it would be like if the world would read her diary, which is pretty crazy because this is a very famous book. And then April 4th, 1944, she writes in the entry that she wants to go on living after her death, and she succeeds with that. She is very well known these days. On August 1st, 1944, she writes the last entry in her diary. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you, in February 1945, in Bergen-Belsen, she dies at a concentration camp. And that's pretty much what this book is about. The interesting thing about this book is written, there's not chapters, there's dates. And there's a whole bunch of dates. One thing that I like about books is that there's a lot of breaks. I mean, each diary entry is no longer than 3 pages long. And I think that's really fantastic. There's one part that's a little bit longer than 3 pages. But the rest of it, there's a lot of entries to where it's like 1 page. Sometimes you've got 3 entries on both sets of pages. So, yeah, this was a very interesting book. I really enjoyed this book a lot. It's really incredible. It's really sad that this young girl with so much spirit and so much personality winds up getting killed by the Holocaust. The Holocaust was an awful event, and I think that it's awful that it happened, and it's a shame that this family had to go with this. And when you look at it, there's 8 people that were in hiding, and they finally got. Nobody knows exactly on who told them that they were in this building, but somebody snitched on them. That's how they knew they were there. And that's pretty sad. But I highly recommend it. Also, in the book, there's a brief description of the Holocaust and what goes on. It's like about 3 or 4 pages, and it's very interesting. Although I knew most of that information before I read this book. But yes, this is a fantastic book. This is a sad book, but it's not a book that's going to make you cry. I mean, Schindler's List is a movie and probably a book that will make you cry a lot more than this, because Schindler's List actually brings me to tears. This didn't really bring me to tears, but there were parts of this movie that were really intense. Really, really intense. I was engrossed in this movie. I started watching it at 9 o'clock at night, and I couldn't stop until I finished the movie. It was a fantastic movie, and I highly recommend it. So, that's it. I'm Peter the Book Lover. If you liked what I've said in this video, please do me a favor and hit the like button. I would really appreciate your likes. They mean a lot to me. And if you can, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. I make new content all the time, and I would really make an effort to satisfy you if you subscribe to my channel. Although I do not have a high production value, but I really try my best. And that's about it. I want to thank everybody for coming by, and I'm Peter the Book Lover, and I hope to see you in the next video.